Well, as we round the corner from February into March and welcome in the start of meteorological spring, it is time to recap our winter or lack thereof. Boy, we sure didn't have much snow or cold temperatures this winter, but what does the data show and what do the numbers reflect? And how will this winter 2023 to 2024 go down in the record books? We're going to break down all of that data, plus a look ahead to the total solar eclipse and some of the weather conditions that we can expect as we inch closer towards that April 8th total solar eclipse. So let's break down the numbers and talk about the winter warmth and this historically mild winter of 2023 to 2024. Let's start things off in December, which was historic on several fronts. First and foremost, it was the warmest all-time December with our average temperature close to 42, and that put us near 9 degrees above average. In addition to the exceptional warmth of December, snowfall really was hard to come by. In fact, we only got a trace of accumulation, tying it for the least snowy December on record. Now, as we rounded the calendar into the start of 2024, January did bring us some cold, but overall we were still above average in the temperature department, coming in at 1.6 degrees above normal. Our January average this month was 29.1, and snowfall was well below average. So despite the more even temperatures, we really did not have much in the way of January snowfall. In February, well, we are likely to go down as another month that is close to the warmest on record, and the data shows near 9-degree temperatures above average. That puts our February monthly average at close to 39 degrees. And I'm going to break down the specific monthly data and where we stand as far as our warmest February on record goes. Again, December and February bookended an incredibly warm winter. Each of those months was nearly 9 degrees above average, and in between sandwich was a January that was still above average, but at least a little bit closer to what you would expect during the month of January. Now, as a whole, winter is the third warmest on record, and that includes those 3 months of meteorological winter from December, January into February. Our average temperature over the course of winter has been unsurprisingly well above freezing at 36.4 degrees, and that ties us with 1881 to 1882. Topping the list, the mildest winter on record featured an average temperature closer to 37, and that's true of both 1931 to 1932 and also 1879 to 1880. And we'll finalize that data as the National Weather Service publishes their seasonal weather recap. Now, in more recent memory, we had some exceptional spring-feeling warmth this week, and in fact, the warmest February 27th on record by a long shot. You may remember this week, those Tuesday temperatures certainly felt like spring. We shattered the previous record of 66. That was set back in 1996, and we've had several mid-60s days on this date in history, but never in the 70s, let alone a temperature of 73 degrees. Overall, the month of February ranks very highly on the list of warmest on record. Now, if you measure it in terms of our daytime high temperature, this February actually does take the cake, topping that list with an average high of 48.5 degrees. Number 2 is another recent year, 2017 at 48.4, and the late 19th century, we did have weather data in the Toledo area back then, and that was a very warm one. 46 was the average high, 2023 45.1, and yes, another one from the 1880s at 45.1. Now, that is looking at the high temperature. Overall mildest February on record using that metric. Now, if you use a different metric or the mean temperature, which includes the daytime high and the overnight low, you find that we are still very high ranking as far as mildest Februaries go, with an average temperature of close to 39 degrees. That puts us just one spot shy of 1882, which brought us an average temperature of 39.4 degrees. And you'll find similar players on this list, including 2017 and 1880, and rounding out the list is February of 1930. Now, if you like the warmth and you're looking forward to some warmer weather, this pattern is likely to continue into the start of March and begin a very mild start to meteorological spring. Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, I want to go over the forecast highs and the record highs for those days as to what we're expecting. Temperatures are going to surge to the 60s on Saturday, and Sunday and Monday, they're going to reach the 70s. Sunday in particular, we are likely to tie or exceed the current record of 71 degrees. Now, Saturday's record isn't quite as impressive, and we would have to get to 64 degrees to break that 1882 record. Again, you'll find that year as well was one of the warmest ones in February and into early March. So we're going to be close to the record there. Monday's also going to be close to the 1983 record. That was 76 degrees. Our high temperature on Monday was 75, is forecast to be 75 degrees. So several more days awfully close to the record as you anticipate and look at that 10-day forecast. Now across the country, it's been an exceptionally mild winter season as well. High temperature records have abounded in the past month, and if you look at all the weather sites and weather stations from around the country, there have been over 2,700 record high temperatures across the country in the past month alone. Now, how does that compare to the daily low temperature records? In the last month, there have only been 53 that were set in the entire United States. So clearly outweighing the lows is that 2,700 and change high temperature records, and part of that is correlated to climate change and seeing those warm records be more commonplace, and the cold records are becoming a little bit less frequent and less common. So that's the temperatures this winter. What about snowfall? We've also been hard pressed to get any meaningful snow accumulation, and February is tied for the least snowy on record with just half an inch of snow accumulation. We've gotten a lot of viewer questions, not just about the snow, but about precipitation as a whole. And February has been awfully dry, looking at both rainfall and snowfall alike. Rainfall well less than 1 inch, and the latest reports, at least at the Toledo Express Airport, showing just 0.6 of an inch of rainfall, and that puts us nearly 2 inches below average in terms of our monthly rainfall. Now across the board for the winter, both the last 2 winters have brought us hardly any snowfall. 2022 to 2023, just 10 inches of snow accumulation in December, January, and February. Now this winter has been even less in the snowfall department thus far. If you simply look at December, January, and February, those 3 months of winter, you get to 8.6 inches of accumulation. So certainly not much in the way of snowfall. Our seasonal snowfall, and this includes snow that happened before the start of winter, for instance, that Halloween snow and snowfall in November, that puts us at 9.5. But regardless of how you look at it, the last 2 winters really have not brought much in terms of impressive wintry weather and snow accumulation. Let's look at the monthly graph, starting things off at December of 2022 and going all the way to February of 2024. So in other words, the last 2 winters, how has snowfall fared? And looking at a month-by-month level. Well, in December of 2022, we got a little over 1 inch of snow accumulation. Certainly a very quiet start to the winter season. January of 23, close to 8 inches of snow accumulation, and that February, boy, not much in the way of snowfall. In fact, last winter played out very similarly to how this one did, in that we had a decent burst of snow in January, but February and December bookended a very quiet winter. Now this winter has followed suit, with the December just featuring a trace of accumulation. January finally did bring us some decent accumulation. However, February, we've been hard pressed to find any meaningful snow, and that is a very similar, strikingly similar pattern to what experienced last winter as well. Now, while part of this is certainly related to climate change, there are local impacts due to El Nino that have shaped how this winter has evolved and developed, and part of that has to do with the tendency for the Midwest and the Great Lakes regions to get mild and dry conditions this time of year, and that has to do with the polar jet stream and really not seeing a whole lot of activity as far as both storm track goes and also getting really bursts of cold weather. Now, El Nino winters do tend to produce cooler than normal conditions down in the southeast and wetter than normal conditions in the southwestern United States, but overall it's been an incredibly quiet time of year across the Great Lakes. Now, with El Nino playing such a big role in our weather this winter, you may be wondering, will it continue into spring? And also, what can you expect as we head towards the total solar eclipse on April 8th, 2024? Well, in last week's newsletter, I did break down some of the climatology, or the normal weather data that is expected on April 8th, and some of the extremes, both highs and lows, that we have had on April 8th. So will El Nino continue for the total solar eclipse? Well, we are gradually shifting away from an El Nino pattern and more towards what we describe as a neutral pattern, and that falls somewhere between El Nino and La Nina. Now, as we head towards the summer and even the autumn, we're likely to actually see a transition towards more La Nina conditions, and that is reflective of cooler than normal waters out in the equatorial Pacific, whereas right now we're at warmer than normal waters in that vicinity. Looking at the latest sea surface temperatures or El Nino update, there is a lot of mild water out towards the Pacific. There is cooler water towards the Atlantic, but it's really those equatorial areas and those bright reds that are reflective of warmer than normal ocean waters, and that is what has shaped our weather pattern so much, causing the evolution of the jet stream that has not been conducive for much snow or cold weather across the Great Lakes region. In other words, this pattern is likely to continue for a little bit longer, but gradually ease off and shift towards more neutral conditions as we head into the start of spring. We'll continue to keep you updated on both climate change as we get the official data for this winter, and also on that total solar eclipse. You can subscribe at WTOL.com/email for the very latest. Take care.